It's 11:11 on the East Coast. I'm George Hudson. Joined with me is Robbie Colbreth. Welcome to October. Welcome to 11:11. Welcome to the Savage Will podcast. Anybody in Florida, who went through the hurricane, we want to definitely do a shout out to you guys.
Big shout out.
Anyone struggling, anyone needing
Carolina.
help, we definitely feel for you guys and hope and pray that you guys can recover well and recover strong and move through that. We're up in Jacksonville, or I am at least, and just very thankful for the area. So anyone struggling with that, we definitely want to acknowledge that and hope that you guys are recovering well. Robbie, how you doing today?
Man, I'm feeling great, man. Feeling great. This topic, don't apologize for who you are. First, before I jump into that, Florida, you do have our love, just like George said. Carolinas, you got our love. Wherever Ian finishes off, man, and you're feeling the devastation of all that, you got our love. We're praying for you, and we know things will get better. We encourage you to believe that as well. Don't lose your hope in all that's going on with this thing. But so let's talk about this for a minute. Let's talk about this topic. Don't apologize for who you are. So much is packed in those 6 words. Don't apologize for who you are. I don't know if in this hour and 11 minutes we're going to be able to unpack all of this. And if you guys want us to come back and do a part 2 to this thing, we'll do a part 2 to it. But at the end of the day, we need to come to a place in our confidence. We need to come to a place in our reasoning. We need to come to a place in our love for ourselves where we no longer make excuses. We no longer apologize for the actions that we make, the steps that we take, the impacts that it causes us. We have to be responsible for the things that we do. So I'm going to touch on a few things in this whole thing. We're going to touch on a few things. Everything that follows is a result of what you see here. That's from iRobot. Everything that follows is a result of what you see here. There is a revolution that's coming. And I want to really state this. And the revolution is really the revolution of the mind being freed from all the strongholds, all the devices, all the structures, superstructures that are built systematically to keep us in a certain kind of place, keep us in a certain way of thinking, keep us in a certain type of lockstep so that powers, masses, people that control, and can have dominance and preeminence over our lives. Can tell us to go buy new iPhones, can tell us to go buy new cars, can tell us to buy electric cars or whatever else, and we'll be under that trapping to just go do it. We're not buying necessarily because we're buying more necessarily because we're marketed to, and we're being told in a very subtle way to do this. And so the right question that we should ask ourselves early on in this whole presentation is, why do we do some of the things that we do? And why do we apologize for who we are? Apologize for what we have done in our lives. And some things, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about some narcissistic code that we're trying to drop in this hour, because we're not talking about some narcissistic code. We're not talking about some level of arrogance. We're not talking about some level of conceit, none of those kind of things. Not at all. We're talking about the fact that therapeutically, in a negative way, we have been preconditioned to be I'm sorry community of people by and large. I'm sorry, I apologize, and make ourselves feel that we have to always fill gaps in our lives with this code, this language, because it's customary, it's commonplace, it's something we've grown used to. And so we've lost the ability to protect ourselves because of that. We've lost a certain aspect of what reality can be for us. We've lost a certain level of expression. We've lost the ability to be authorized to live and to grow and to become something far greater than the packaged remains that we are. So in this, you're going to find that again, off of the iRobot movie, my logic is undeniable as we build this thing up. But we've got to protect ourselves. We've got to deal with a different set of rules and drop a different type of codex so that we can change what we do, why we do it, and stop always apologizing or over apologizing for things you have little control over, for people you cannot and should not be controlling, and for thoughts that you don't have enough reasoning or enough data to go ahead and support. George, you can go ahead and jump in here for a few minutes.
Yeah, you definitely hit on a lot of things there, and I would say definitely confidence is a big thing that you should, that will prevent you from apologizing for who you are. Again, you hit on, we're not talking about just being narcissistic, being rude, being just an aggressive personality, and everyone's going to accept you, and everyone has to deal with you. That kind of personality. There's definitely a dichotomy at play with maintaining a level of morality and respect and consideration. But also, you have to understand that you have to stay true to who you are and what your vision is and what your morals are. And you can't let that be compromised just because people aren't joining you in your path. So you have to understand that, hey, this is my path. This is what I'm designed to do, and have confidence in that. And then understand that not everyone has the same vision as you. Not everyone. You can't assume that people have the same vision, the same perspective, the same morals, and then the same desire to go out and make it happen, right? So you can't wait for the bandwagon to come with you. You have to start before the bandwagon's even there.
Kind of like that phrase where I talk to my sons, and you've said it before. I shared it with you. I think I've shared it with Savage Will Population. Don't follow the crowd, make the crowd, and become a human highlight. And becoming a human highlight, that's not being showy. It's not saying to show off. It means that when somebody reads the highlight of your life, what was your contribution? And if in the genesis of your contribution, believe that everyone needs to follow you, you're wrong, because you're establishing you. So in a rules-based world, you're always going to come up short if you believe that when you start becoming who you are, everybody's supposed to jump in. And we're talking about stop apologizing, right? We're talking about breaking the rules-based world. Joe, go ahead.
What comes to mind is, I think, instead of don't apologize, don't ask permission to be and do the things you are passionate about.
Because you already have permission.
Exactly. And, from a very basic understanding or basic example, you could say don't be scared to be interested in the things that you're interested in, the things that you're passionate about in life. Just because it might not be what your friends are passionate about, it's not, the mainstream, or maybe it is, but you have a slightly different take, or you want to pursue a different route. It's not the vision that other people had for you. There's a lot of things that might be imposed by your parents, their vision for you. If it's not exactly what, and trying to live up to the vision they had for you is just something that's not going to create a fruitful path for you. It's not what you were designed to do. You were designed to find, and create your path for 100%. Yourself.
Based on sorry, mommy, daddy, that I'm not a doctor, that I'm not a lawyer, that I'm not whatever it was you wanted me to be, because it makes others think less of you. As soon as you say I'm sorry, you're giving a power and you're giving a control to somebody else for your life. Now watch this. I'm not saying don't apologize for something you've done wrong in an offense that you've caused that injured somebody's life. I'm saying when you're apologizing for the life and the expression that you're authorized to carry out because somebody else believes you should be doing something different, you've just given them power and control over you. George, jump in.
Yeah, for example, say you grow up in a sports family and the youngest isn't interested in sports. And if they were to go and be a painter, and then they spend all day, instead of watching football on Saturdays and Sundays, they're out in the garage painting a mural or something like that. And then if they were to apologize, sorry, I'm not interested in football, older brother or older sister or mom or dad. Like that's what we're getting at when we say don't apologize for who you are. Don't apologize for following your path. Don't apologize for your passions. Like if you just deliberately insult someone or punch your sibling in the face, like that's not what we're talking.
That deserves an apology.
Well, that probably deserves an apology, in most contexts, but probably always an exception. But
Yeah,
um,
I got a munchable for you right off of that. Analyze before you apologize.
exactly.
Analyze before you apologize, because in many cases, what you're about to say, what you're about to do, you're not sneezing on your possibilities where you need to apologize for that sneeze. You're not coughing on your actualization where you need to apologize for that. You're getting up and you're getting into the interpretation that from all the examples, good, bad, or indifferent, that you've received from all the influences of your life, you've come to a place where you said, this is who I am becoming. And also you have the permission to become that. And also you carry with that the permission, and you should also carry with that the guidance that you need to change or disrupt or interrupt that along the way. Because wherever you start, it's kind of like a process management or project management scenario. I used to use this philosophy. Whatever I start, whatever human resources I have, whatever other resources I have, financial, whatever, to start a project, I'm going to break that project, some aspect of that project, I'm going to break in 90 days. And the reason why I'm going to break in 90 days, that's a cycle. And after that cycle has run, it's going to give me and it's providing for me data points. And I'm going to get those data points, but those data points are based on all the resources I had at that time and the knowledge that I acquired or had available to me at that time. Once these things start working through this cycle, all the impacts, cross stream, upstream, downstream, it starts to tell me, it starts to define for me a story. And it tells me what is working, what's not working, what's hinging on a Band-Aid type thing, or wherever I need to move. And so I break it. I look at the piece that's causing the greatest hemorrhaging, and it's got to be adjusted, removed, or whatever. So in your process of becoming whatever you're becoming, stop over apologizing for the adjustments you have to make. These are times when a parent or somebody else might come into your life, seeing you making these adjustments and say, I told you so. This is not going to work. This is not working for you. No, this is called an adjustment. This is exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to make adaptations and adjustments in order for you to be able to achieve. You got to align to a different superstructure that you're finding along the way. So it doesn't necessarily warrant an apology. It warrants you understanding you have to make adjustments along the way. So stop over apologizing. People are going to think you're weak, and you're over apologizing for stuff you can't control anyway.
Right. And just to hit on that also is people think that there's a safe path. In reality, there is no safe path in life. There's risk involved. There's a risk assessment in every path that you take. Everything you do is risky. It could end up bad. It could end up poorly. So those people that come into your life and they're telling you, yeah, see, I told you it wouldn't work. I told you you wouldn't be successful. You should change paths. And, right at that moment, it's easy to sit there and say, it's like the Monday afternoon quarterback or whatever. It's easy to sit there and say, well,
should have done that.
You should have thrown it over the middle. Witten was wide open. I'm talking about Romo, but he would beat himself up about it too. Or, CD's like open in the corner and Dak's like tying his shoe or something. So it's a matter of, are those people really supporting you? Like your parents might have good intentions, but ultimately I think if it's a path that you've decided in your mind, like this is what I'm going to do, this is who I'm going to be, and this is the path that I'm going to pursue, whether that's being a musician when your dad or mom wants you to be a lawyer or whatever, and they don't come in and support you in that and say, okay, how do you become successful in this? Like it can be done. Just how, and then finding that niche, that support group, that circle
There it is.
Those people to be on board with you.
That's on board with you, that understand you and where you're going. Go ahead. That's hot.
And understand that you ultimately are responsible for your decisions, and they can sit there and say, okay,
park right there for a second, dude. You don't lose your thought. You are ultimately responsible for your decision. When you venture out and make that journey into this space to become this person, you are now responsible for that. So just like you want to blame your parents if something goes right or wrong, you can't blame them. You can't blame anybody. You own the responsibility. So that right there, if you catch that, no, neither should you apologize to yourself if it works or doesn't work, and neither should you be blaming anybody else if it works or doesn't work. The beauty of life is to accept the challenge and go ahead and work out the details. Get your support group, and your support groups are going to mature, and some are going to leave, they need to, and some are going to arrive, they must. In order for you to get where you're going, you need it.
Yeah.
So don't apologize for those changes. I want to say this one thing. People lose respect for you when you start over apologizing for something. Beverly Engel, in a book called The Power of an Apology, says over apologizing isn't so different from over complimenting. You may think you're displaying yourself as a nice or caring person, but you're actually sending a message that you lack confidence and you're ineffectual. You're weak. You're covering a weakness. You understand? And that weakness and that insecurity can hinder you from getting to where you need to be, where you need to go, and what you need to embrace. George, sorry about us. Go ahead and jump in that thing.
No, you're good. Like, so I have this reel of a guy. He's standing on a podium. He's saying, the most free people in life are the most disciplined. Self-discipline is the path of freedom. People think the freedom to do anything, to be, make any decision, whether it's bad or good, is really freedom. But the more disciplined you are about your choices and your decisions based on what you desire in life, the more free and the more, things that you can achieve and go out and do. So it's like you have to bring those people in. It's a great litmus test of what they're saying to you. If they're trying to steer you in a different direction, or are they jumping in and saying, no, like, if this is your decision, all right, pursue it with everything you have.
Here's some considerations.
Exactly. How do you become successful in what you're doing if you decide this is what you want to do? And you better do it with everything you have. And what's your attack plan? So there's two different types of people. They're going to tell you, no, being a musician is really hard. It's competitive. And there's a lot of people out there trying to do it that, they just end up on the street, failed musician, beauty school dropout.
Embrace your why.
Yeah. And
Embrace
then, or there's a group of people, and they're going to say, all right, go for it. Like, what are you doing to get there? And those are the types of people.
Why do you want to go there? Why do you want to do this?
Exactly.
And be sure that when they're asking you the why and they're giving you these discovery questions, understand that you're not giving them permission. They're just trying to understand how they can support you or not. Mm-hmm. Because if you give them permission over your why, if you give them permission over your plan, then you're also giving them permission to abuse what your why is and what your plan is. And that's where your discipline, your discipline, your order, and your commitment, DOC, discipline, order, and commitment, that's when it comes into play. Because if you have your doc in front of you, you understand your doc, you've written the vision, you've made it plain, so you can come back and pass back by it and see whether or not you're on course or not. Your doc is going to keep you intact. Your doc is going to give you that ability to say as much as you want to say about where you're going and how you're going to get there. Your doc, because your discipline is also going to order your footsteps. The order is going to make sure that you have a standard and a goal and an objective and a time frame. And then your commitment is, I've got the intestinal fortitude and I've gone out to get the necessary resources, people that know better than I to help me in this plan. And I'm not going to give them permission over me, but I'm going to allow them to ask me the discovery questions without a reaction, but with a response, so that I can go deeper and find where I'm actually going. They're not shaping that. They're helping me to understand who I am in my why, so I can get where I'm going with my discipline, my order, and my commitment. My doc.
And there's a way to stick to your, like, hold your ground and not be rude. Like, there's a way to kind of show your self-respect without shoving those people to the side.
Sure.
Some phrases that come to mind in doing that, like, say you just have someone that's really challenging you, telling you it's not going to work, telling you that, hey, maybe you should find a different path. You could just say, hey, I get that this is a hard path. I get that, there are doubts. I have those doubts too. But when I go home at night, I think, I'd much rather be in the boat of saying, hey, I tried it and it didn't work, versus what if I tried it? What if I really loved it? What if it was better than everything I ever imagined? Because it's just the dichotomy of, what if this turns out not to be the thing for me? We can't have that perspective as Savage World thinkers. We have to think, what if it turns out better than I ever imagined, right? If this is something that you're passionate about, you've gut checked your why, you say, hey, these are my giftings. I feel like I'd be good at it. How do I excel at it? And then what if it turns out better than I ever imagined?
Everything worth anything costs something. Got it? That's a munchable. Everything worth anything costs something. And so the illusion of a TikTok world, the illusion of a social media world is that everything worth anything happens. Doesn't. You got to put your work in. You got to put your time in. You got to address the strengths, the weaknesses, and the turns that need to happen in order for you to arrive at the place where you need to arrive at. And so the reason why we don't want to apologize for all this is because it's going to lessen the impact of your future apologies when you actually need to make one. In other words, when you undertake something and you're going after it, just because you hit one of these patches that require that you go deeper and research stronger where you're stuck presently, don't go starting to cry wolf and start saying I'm sorry as a type of and start bringing all this unnecessary weight and attention to your situation that may later require a sincere apology. Stop doing that. Just go deeper. Just ask some more questions. Just prepare yourself for, I'm on a journey, and in this journey that I'm on, it's going to cost me to put some work in. And as it costs me to put work in, there are things I'm going to find out about myself that up until that time, I didn't know existed, good, bad, and indifferent. There's some places you might be a little lazy. There's some places that you might be a little afraid, and it's going to uncover those places. But if you start apologizing for the reality that most successful people are going to have to go through and endure, then you may not ever get to any success in your life because you won't have the right metrics, the right ingredients, the right preparation, and the right adjustment schedule that you need to make along the way.
Yeah, it's just a matter of being locked in and not asking permission, and then finding that support, like we're saying, because or else I think ultimately it is a lack of confidence. I think it is a fear of the unknown. I think it is a doubt.
What part is a lack of confidence and fear of unknown? What do you mean by that?
I think those are the root emotions. Those are the root thoughts. And then it expresses themselves as, I'm sorry, the need for approval and those sorts of things. You haven't given yourself the approval, yourself the validation. You haven't had the confidence. You haven't given it the thought. You say, hey, I'm going to have opposition. I'm going to have people that don't understand this, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Yep.
And I can't be in the boat of, man, I've been wanting to do this forever and just haven't taken the step for it, and what if I just started it? What if I just if I became successful, like I know I can do at it, I think I would enjoy my life much, much more. And you have to really weigh those options. If I could do the same thing and make the same money or even make more money than what I'm doing now, doing something I enjoy more, is like, how do I get that ball rolling? And it's an obvious question. It's an obvious answer to that question, but we do it all the time. We spend time doing things that we know we don't enjoy, but we're not doing anything to take us on the path of freedom,
You started walking into that real nice, like validation needs to also have with it empathy and needs to have with that also support. And that's your launching pad. And that begins and it's always going to end with you. Those people that come along, that research that you do along the way, that's going to fortify the decision that you 100% wholeheartedly made to go into whatever it is you're doing, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a job, whether that's another entrepreneurial expression of yourself. It doesn't matter. The beginning of that approach and that launch should start with you validating and giving yourself permission to do it. You being responsible to get all the research done as much as you can find to help you get that. But don't over research yourself, because then you might look at somebody else's plan and model and you'll forget about the genius of what you were creating. Now you're doing what they did and expecting the result, and it's not going to work. That's where we break off sometime and mess up. We see so much of what everybody else did, but it was some spark on the inside of us. Remember this. There was a spark on the inside of us that caused us to write some type of idea. We took that idea and we say, yes, I can do it, validate it. And you start to feel and emotionalize and internalize and then intellectualize all the steps you thought were needed to get it done. Then you went and found some credible research from people who have done something similar. You don't know if they had the same twitch or motive operandi on the inside of them. You don't know what their operant conditioning was to get them excited to move in that particular direction. You don't know if it was a pain or some other thing they were addressing in their lives that got them to launch whatever they launched. What you're supposed to find is what was the steps and what were the struggles that they experienced. That doesn't mean that they're yours. It means that you learned about them. So you keep the integrity of what you want to do and the spark and the flame that caused what you want to do to come alive. And you've got the right feeling, emotion, and everything else that supports that. And now you got some data points to set that up. And now you go ahead and make that launch. And then you get a couple of people, they'll come. The people that you're looking for, they will come into your life. And I got to say this too, in this apology trip, be careful. Watch this, because typically when we start a journey of any sort, we're bringing people into our lives that were based on our construct, who we were at that time in our lives. So we've got to listen, we've got to be mindful of this, because in the mindfulness of this, we have to realize that if I'm an over apologizing person, I have been doing this all my life. Whoever I'm bringing into my life right now, if I haven't fixed this, is going to be somebody that's going to abuse me and keep me down and keep me away from achieving my goal. Because the first thing I have to do is to stop over apologizing, stop exhausting and irritating myself and other people around me, stop setting myself up for rejection and canceling the plans and breaking up with somebody because I didn't deal with how I am and who I am. I'm just looking at a great idea. I'm just looking at a great plan, and it is right, but I haven't scheduled out the stuff that can stop me, which has always led me to having to apologize and having to esteem somebody over me in the great opportunity of launching the new me.
Yeah, I think you hit on something good. There is a lot of psychologists, a lot of people in that area, counselors would say that there's probably some heavy statistical data to back this up, but people who apologize a lot, they actually have experienced some sort of an abuse in their lives, whether that's physical, mental, psychological, emotional, whatever it might be. But people that even grow up in like a decent and a good background, there's still some levels of psyche that's not healed there. And then, so it's not that you necessarily have to grow up in a terrible background. Parents are abusive, siblings are abusive, and so forth. But like, it's just part of our coping mechanism, maybe, that, we don't deal with that trauma. Everyone has childhood trauma that you have to kind of work through to understand your psyche, understand yourself, understand how you give and receive communication and love and affirmation and things like that. So in order to do that, you have to work we all face resistance. We all face rejection. And it's, how do we move through that? How do we analyze, the psyche and the ego and all these other things in terms of playing into how we think, how we feel, and how we move forward in action? Because there's times in life where emotionally and psychologically we get stuck. And then that leads us to not taking action in our business life, in our skill life, and reading books and obtaining knowledge, because we haven't worked through that trauma of, he or she didn't like me, I got rejected, I didn't feel like I got respected in the way I should in that environment. No matter how little it is, even if it's just like, well, I didn't get a thank you for the hard work I received, and we all like have to sort through that. We have to think through those things, and we can't let ourselves get psychologically and emotionally stuck and withdraw. Yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Let me drop a nugget in there. This is another munchable. Grab the little child named you, and sit the little child named you up on your desk in front of you. That's the you where the injury occurred, and the you where you are today, where you've piled up all this other stuff, all this other drama into your life. First of all, give yourself permission to understand I've increased my feelings and my power in this negative area for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take me a minute to talk to my injured self and tell my injured self, listen, I am going to protect you from this point forward. We're going to heal together. Right now, that might seem super simplistic, but I like to keep it simple. And so I'll put injured Robbie up on this desk, and I'll tell injured Robbie, listen, we've been through hell together. So injured Robbie right here, I'm telling you, and I'm making a commitment. I'm giving you my doc. I'm going to discipline and order and commit myself to the fact that I'm not going to allow you to get hurt anymore. I'm not going to allow you to make decisions based on apologizing and over apologizing, being weak and of low self-esteem. I'm not going to allow you to go through another relationship where you allow for people to just hurt you and harm you in order to get along, because these are things that you wanted so much in your life, but you never were able to receive them, or you couldn't feel or see or understand that you were getting them because you were hurt, little Robbie. And so then after I do that, then I have to set up a therapeutic model that's going to follow with this. So little Robbie realizes I do have a good doc, discipline, order, and commitment to get this thing done. And in the therapeutic model, I know that it's forming, storming, norming, performing, and transforming. In the forming stage, I have to identify and tell myself there's going to be some ups and some downs. Forming. In the storming, in that forming stage, there's some things that's going to aggravate the hell out of me. And they're going to cause me to have to face some things about myself that I don't like about myself. And I'm going to have to be okay with saying, self, we don't need this any longer. It no longer serves us. Forming, storming, norming. Then a new behavior is going to arrive that's going to model itself on the launching pad of understanding for me to do this new thing to change my life. And I'm going to start to normalize in it. Performing. After I normalize in it, after a while, it's no longer practice. It's now a way of life. I start transforming the last component. I start transforming. Now, all of a sudden, I'm moving into the reality of, I'm starting to become. And because I'm starting to become, because I set up a therapeutic model to talk to my injured self and to have a doc, discipline, order, and commitment to tell my injured self, we're coming out of this. And we no longer have place for us to be injured. And we have a therapeutic model, forming, storming, norming, performing, and transforming. So we know that it's a process. Therefore, I cannot and will not allow you, old injured self, to continue to be injured. You're now going to put on a new self called healed. And when you put on that new self called healed, it's because you've looked at that model and you realize that it is a process and a course. And you realize that you got the right discipline, the right order, and the right commitment so that you can survive, and you have survived, but now you can survive the transformation and get to the place of your greatness. And you'll realize at this place too, I'm never too old to get to the new me. I can heal along the way. And I don't need to give another apology to anybody else because I wasn't self-aware or more self-aware until I took the little injured me, set that injured me in front of me, and made a commitment, a pact that we're no longer going to be injured, we're going to be healed, and we're going to move together in our greatness. So my child, ego, woundedness, all that doesn't have a place anymore. It's my healed self. And so all of a sudden, the child that needs so much disappears and becomes the adult that actualizes in the greatness. That's some good stuff.
One phrase you said that I really liked is I'm never too old to become the new me. And like that's unmentionable in itself, is in the fact that, you know, I think that's why old people are like, that's why we're still here. It's like, we're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to heal. We're here to like love people. We're here to do all these things. And that's why in my opinion, that's our life mission, is find our path. How can we help and love and grow people and bring people along in our path? And I don't think we're just here to exist and, you know, make a decent living and go home at the end of the day and just lay down and then die, you know.
Yeah, exactly right.
There's so much more I think we're here to do, and I think part of it is to learn and to put not just be in the flesh, and to adopt like spiritual characteristics. And
that's hot right there.
Of our, you know, from the source, from God, from, you know, the force that put us here on the planet is, you know, to grow and to love and to learn. And that's a whole process and journey. And of course it's not linear. It's a cycle. It goes up and down and around and then, but as long as we're in the upward trajectory, I think that's the purpose why we're here. So people that say I'm too old to, like, yeah, I've just been doing this the whole time. Like 20-year-olds say that, you know,
you know,
it doesn't matter.
CT Colbreth put a comment out there and said, this is called healthy thinking, like what we're talking about right now. And when we're getting drugged by our own thoughts, it could be vain imaginations that's trying to creep up and destroy us, right? And that's what's hot. So in context of what you're saying, we're talking about flipping the script. And when we flip the script, we're flipping the script, which takes self-discipline, and it takes self-discipline over time so that we can begin to feel and actualize in the new us. You understand? So we got to catch that, right? And we got to get out of our own way. And we got to get comfortable even in this transformation of saying no to some stuff, even no to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise, if we don't say no to ourselves, no to our lusts, no to our former commitments to other people who are not doing everything that's in alignment with where we're going. If we don't learn how to say no and get past the awkward and the uncomfortable, we're going to stay in the same spot, and we're going to probably die with more disappointments than anybody else, because we saw a way and we knew it to be better, but we were apologizing and keeping ourselves in a bad situation. You understand? In a bad mindset, in order to placate and commiserate with other people that we heretofore had esteemed. And so we've got to break that off. You were so spot on when you were saying that we're here for something greater, spiritually, to impact other people's lives, emotionally to impact our own lives, and intellectually to galvanize all of these new creations that we're finding along the way and do something big, do something great, so that maybe the next time when people see us in our transparency, so that the next time that some people see us in our wholeness, they're going to see our light, they're going to see our brilliance, they're going to see our positivity. They're going to catch our energy. They're going to say, this feels good. And they're going to want to be a part of, may not be necessarily 100% part of what you're doing, but they want a part of that journey, that light, that energy, that new focus. You understand? Because I believe in a very strong general statement, everybody wants to come out of this darkness that we've been living in. We want to move in a greater understanding, a nuance of who we are, right? We want to move in a light where we're not undermining who we are, what we can do. We're tired of putting the cursor and the mouse with the cursor over our lives and clicking it and putting us on pause. And we're ready to start moving and living. So unclick your pause button. Some things need to be put on pause, but we need to unclick the pause and get to the cause, click the cause. So we can make some stuff happen.
Yeah, I think a big thing there is if you have to put your life on pause to help the people around you, and they're not like directly disabled or something like that, like they're just bringing you down by their thought patterns, by their actions. You know, you're constantly bringing people out of, you know, destructive situations that they continually put themselves in. I wouldn't say that that is a healthy environment for you.
Right.
So at some point you have to remove yourself from that. And I'm not saying don't ever help people, but you can't, it's you have to find a balance. You can't necessarily just continue to allow people to drag you down into their destructive habits and behaviors.
That's
and this
right.
happens all the time in like romantic relationships.
Yeah.
People find a partner that, because they weren't specific about what they were looking for and weren't alert and aware to those, you know, red flags or whatever, they end up finding themselves in this relationship where someone is destructive or passive aggressive in some capacity, and they just don't really know how to get out of it, and they're attached and things like that. You know, whether it's the girl that is always with guys that take advantage of her, or the guy that is with girls that always lets, you know, always runs over him, you know, whatever it is, you attracted that because you felt the need to have apologetic behavior and not justify your passions.
That's right.
And then not stand on the ground that you deserve or that you want because you felt like you weren't worth it. So you have to detach from that, and, you know, your journey is going to be unique to you. So backpedaling a little bit to what you were saying earlier is, if you see somebody else's success blueprint, you can learn from it. You can like take it and try to learn their experience, but ultimately your experience is just going to be a little bit different. Yep. As unique as you are, your experience is going to be unique to you. So your learning process, your success path is unique to you, and comparing that to someone else's success path can set yourself up for this, like, well, they just have all these qualities that I don't have, or they had
the money.
They had the money that I didn't have, or
they have the skin complexion or whatever.
Skin complexion, the height, the good looks, the charm.
Stop talking about me, man. Stop talking about me. Go on, baby. Go on.
Yeah, not many have it like Robbie Colbreth. But you know, you can make an excuse for whatever. And when you start comparing that, not only does it put you in that psychological and that emotional, like, stuck nature, but it's also going to thieve yourself of joy. Like, comparison is the thief of joy. And, you know, when we sit there and say, we can't, you know, you're right, you can't, because that's your mentality. Or if you're like, hey, he's really good at speaking, I feel like that's where I lack. But
no, you don't. There's an apology right there.
No, I'm just saying, like, in a hypothetical, like, say you want to be a public speaker, you see this, like, you see E.T., you see Ed Milet, you see somebody on stage, and they're saying, you know, they're obviously a fine-tuned machine. The way they come about life is just like they're professionals, right? And you're sitting there in the audience, Sally Joe or John Smith is in the audience, and John Smith goes, dang, I want to get to where they're at. They just speak so clearly. Their recall's on point. Everything they do, their emotion, the way they hone in the audience, everything they do is just spectacular. They're professionals. I feel like I wasn't given. And then when you start down that rabbit hole, John Smith is
You're
like,
messing yourself up.
they just sound so good. Well, you can say that. You can acknowledge it. It's like David Goggins says, you might be getting bullied for being fat, but you might also just be fat. And yeah, you screw them for bullying you, but like you're still fat. And like at some point, there's something that you're like. So if I was to pick on John Smith and say, hey, you can't ever speak like them, yada yada yada, like you have to acknowledge your starting point, and then you have to come up with a plan and say, all right, how do I get unfat? It's doable. I just have to do it, right? How do I adopt the speaking patterns of Ed Milet or ET? And I got to acknowledge, like, hey, I'm not there right now. I'm nowhere close, but I can get there. That's the shift. That's the Savage Will thought is you can't just say, hey, so-and-so has great observation skills. So-and-so has great speaking skills. So-and-so is super athletic or sees the court better than I do, whatever it is. But they got to that point, right? It's like, how do I unlearn the things that I've learned that's preventing me from getting there, and then project myself into the future and like really like launch my skills and grow my abilities in a way that's going to get me there. So
we are well equipped. We do have psychological defenses and self-serving biases to protect us from facing possibilities that we might mess up, right? But at the end of the day, to piggyback what you're saying, when I look at the ETs and Ed Milets and the other great speakers of the world, when I see these guys and when I've seen the TD Jakes and the Joel Osteens and some of these others, what I found was none of them started that way. I remember when TD Jakes was back in West Virginia, I think it was, and I was watching him years ago, and I just the Lord put in my heart and said, just pray for him, just pray for him, just pray for him. And I used to pray for him, and he used to preach so hard he sweat through his whole suit, and he'd pray over all of these letters that were sent to him. Absolutely amazing. And sometimes I understood what he was saying, and sometimes I was like, "Oh wow, he's over here and he's over here," and then now look at him. He's a mega man with 300 plus businesses that he runs, plus a mega church where he's given away 10,000 members to 3 different churches, and he's still back to 30,000 members. I've watched what he's done, TD Jakes, and watch what how he got better. He got better at failing forward. He got better at the embrace that this is me and this is my calling, good, bad, or indifferent, and it brings me into this avenue right here. So in context to some of what you were saying too, and guys, we're talking about don't apologize for who you are. Listen, you remember the story about Hansel and Gretel, right? They were following the breadcrumbs, right? And the bread and following the breadcrumbs. What was interesting about that is that they were following something that was enticing, something that was good to eat. They were following a witch. They were following a concept, a mindset, as it were, and what we're talking about. And it got them to a place where they got fat. and the witch's intent was to eat them, to destroy them, right? But they were following the breadcrumbs. They were following the wrong voice. They were following the wrong diet. And they never separated their journey from the breadcrumb itself. Mm-hmm. Some breadcrumbs lead to where you want to go. Other breadcrumbs lead to your disaster, your destruction. Like one of the people out here that's listening to us right now said, listen to the little small voice on the inside to address the red flags. We got to be careful that when we're looking at these little breadcrumbs that we're following, are they leading us to where we are going, to the new us? Mm-hmm. Are these changes and transformations going to bring about a better us, encourage us to forgive, repair relationships, dissolve his hostility, cause us to let go of being manipulated by the witch that's in our lives that can distort and move us off our path? No, we've got to be careful of the breadcrumbs that we're following, that we're consuming. And that's not to say anything negative about all these speakers that we just spoke about, but we also, like we're doing right now, you know my mindset, George. I already said we're going to be the greatest podcast in the world. It's not happening today, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen tomorrow. And when is my tomorrow going to be? After I practice more than what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
It may be the next time. I can make it happen. It's going to happen. By the help of God, it can go, it can grow, it can move. And we can impact people's lives. But we're practicing right now the skill. We're practicing right now the discipline, the order, and the commitment to get these things done. We're apologizing less for whatever's not coming out real good or what we thought about saying that we didn't say. We're apologizing less, and we're putting it all out there on the platform, and we're inviting in the comments and the critiques, and we're saying thank you. But what we're also doing is no longer making apologies for what we're doing. We're taking away the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical enslavement to any form of psychological bondage. We're not allowing ourselves to be romanced by the cultures that we've learned in our homes, the cultures that we see in society that says you can't or you won't because you need this, that, or the other. We're getting rid of that romance. That's a negative romance. And we're putting on the right stuff. You understand? So the witch, what is the witch? A willful controller. Get rid of it. You have people, situations, whatever in your life, that's a willful controller. You did that. Bust it up. The I, intentional abuser psychology. You want certain things a certain kind of way, but because you haven't set that little child down and got that little child to start healing like you need to heal, you bring to yourself intentional abuse. Stop it. Get to the psychology of what you're doing. This is the witch. These are the breadcrumbs. The T. You have a therapeutic negative environment. Right? You form the negative environment. You've been storming in a negative environment. Every time something positive happens, you go flip. Norman, you're doing all the negative stuff. You're performing out of negative behavior and you're transforming to a negative person. Cycles of destroying your hope, your love, and your faith. Get rid of that and get to a positive one. That's the T. The C is critical trigger chasers. Man, you're always chasing somebody's criticism because you always want somebody else's validation. Get rid of that critical thing. Be validated in the fact that this is what we did. Yes, we could have done this better. We could have added this in, but it's not negative. It's good. It's just stay in a good format so it can move you forward. And you bring in people consciously that were going to help you in that delivery. And then the H, Hansel and Gretel effect. Be careful of the Hansel and Gretel effect. Stop letting the witch feed you breadcrumbs. That's going to magnify what you're not. That's going to fatten you up in what you can't become. That's going to cause you to be consumed. You eat yourself up because you have not been able to break out of your hurt. You've not been able to break out of your pain. Stop that. Stop that madness. Get that out of your life, man. Get the witch out of your life and stop eating the breadcrumbs of your past disasters.
Yeah, I think it's important that you just go back to, we talk about it all the time, and it's like the power of making your own decisions and, implementing that change into your life. It's not easy. It's not, the path most traveled, but it's the path that's worth traveling. And behavior modification is, the root of success, in my opinion. Being able to align your actions with your desires and becoming the person that you want to be, that will have the things that you do desire, is like, it's success 101, in my opinion. And in doing that, having the right desires, that are aligned with like your purpose and why you're on the planet, is just all those things that come into play. And finding your root purpose is why I believe that we're here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of distractions along the way, a lot of things that can drag you this left and right. And, to get caught up in those emotions and get stuck, that process of checking yourself, doing self-evaluation, saying, oh, okay, this is what I've been doing. Like, reevaluate. Here are my goals that I've been writing down every day. Or, at the beginning of the week, this is how I map out my week. Did it go according to plan? Where did I fail? How am I apologizing to myself also? I think our self-talk is really important. Where am I not committing to my goals? Where I say I'm going to, where am I letting myself down? that's all important in this path and journey. And it's a constant battle. It's a constant journey. It's not going to stop. And in my opinion, our purpose is to ride that wave, is to find those goals, is to create, that journey for ourselves. And it's a fun one. It's not easy, but we can't back down to that challenge. We can't apologize and make excuses. We can't. The path that's worth taking is going to offer us a lot of opportunity to complain.
Will Smith said, find your way like others. That's what it means to be free, right? Find your way like others. That's what it means to be free. Don't apologize for who you are. You're not done yet. Disrupt whatever is going on. Break whatever has been existing in your life. Put some energy to it and break it. Ready yourself for a change of communication that restricts apology. I'm gonna drop a nugget here real quick. I was fortunate enough to be able to ride around. My father was an insurance agent at one point in time in his life. And my dad used to let me ride around with him. He'd go on his debit and he'd go knock on people's doors and collect for insurance, all this. It's old school, and just ride with him. And, one of the things my dad taught me as a young man, he said, stop apologizing all the time. So apparently I'd already set up this reaction response code as a child. He said, stop apologizing all the time. Well, we were in a rule-based house. And so if I did something wrong, I apologize so I can move it forward and don't get my hind part smoked. But at the end of the day, he was saying, stop apologizing for, all the things that you do all the time. And I listened to him, and he was like, when you make a decision, you deal with that consequence.
Right.
If you make a decision, deal with it. And so if it means you're going to get a punishment, deal with the punishment. If it means it's going to be a reward, deal with the reward. He says, if I do something wrong to you all are my children. Everything I'm doing is for your good. I'm not going to apologize. So in my life, I saw my father, he's passed on, apologize. In my life, I only saw him apologize like 5 times. And it was for some things that were he was just dead wrong. And it created an impact. But apart from that, what I saw him do was to live deliberately. And so that's a strength. That's a power. And I saw that confidence that my pop had. And I said, I want to develop a confidence like that. Now, that caused a lot of different types of reactions from different parts of my family, different members of my family. And I'm not talking about a narcissism or an arrogance or conceit. I'm talking about a confidence. Sometimes when you walk in confidence, people don't understand that, and they call it these different things. But I started to reset. And in my reset, I started to redo my reaction to my response code. And I started shifting that so it became a response, then a reaction code. Because if I react to everything, I can fly off the handle and be this, that, or the other. You understand? And it can cause me detriment and harm. And it can cause me to have to legitimately apologize to somebody. So I had to reset my reaction and response code. I had to reframe how I saw my life. Because at one point, there was some narcissism. At one point, there was a conceit and arrogance. And I was fortunate enough to be shown that by the Lord. And I'm like, God, I don't want this. This is not what I want for my life or for my children. Reset, reframe. And so it started a process of re-engineering my life to do something better for other people. So one, I had to face the child voice. I had to find it. I had to approve it. I had to improve it. I had to own it. I had to justify it. I had to provide safety and protection and get rid of the bully code and the reaction code that went first so that I can get to a response code. And I had to reframe who I am, what I do, why I do it. Was it just for Robbie? No. Was it make the world? As a child, I said, I can change the world for God.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I saw the teaching of Jesus, and he said, have faith in God. Now listen, some people might say, you keep on talking about God. I make no apologies for talking about God. Everybody else talks about their God. They got their cell phones. They talk about their God, their way of communicating. They talk about their God, their money. I'm going to talk about the God of creation. I have no apologies for that. That's your problem. That's not my problem. And so at the end of the day, my reset and reframe and re-engineering of who I am says this: therefore I will, and I shall make it fun. Therefore I am, so I can, so I will, and I shall make it fun and memorable. Therefore I shall be able to, in my I amness, help other people along the way to adapt, adjust, head off their controllers, build a world not based on punishment and needing somebody else's approval, but based on releasing the POW, the prisoner of war, in your mind, so that you can go on and be a great and an amazing person, leaving a legacy, an imprint, an engram on this world. So start the release. Let me say this, and I want you to jump in. President Jimmy Carter in the 70s negotiated the release of the POWs. He negotiated that release. The House and the Senate were both dominated by the Republican Party at that time. They prevented that action from taking place. So as a result, he goes out of office. He still got the POWs in there. The economy was looking bad. He just goes out and he's considered a failure by all accounts. There's so many other things that went along with that. I'm just summarizing some key areas. President Ronald Wilson Reagan comes in the office, and in his first 90 days, if my time frame is right, 91-20, the POWs get released on his watch. He gets a Hero Button Award. He looks like an amazing person. As history keeps unfolding itself, Jimmy Carter, who dropped off the scene, considered one of the worst presidents in modern history, one of the greatest ambassadors and negotiators of peace and release in our history. So he didn't get it while he was in office on a public stage. He got it after the fact. And if it wasn't for him negotiating in the backdrop under several presidential watches, there's a whole lot that we wouldn't have been made free from. So when you change your narrative, it may not put you out in the forefront. When the narrative changes, you might be in the backdrop making major change, major difference in other people's lives. But when you embrace the evolution of yourself, you stop apologizing for who you are. You stop apologizing for what looked like a failed attempt to release POWs. As long as those POWs get free, that's what matters.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is I'd rather be in the backdrop knowing I'm changing lives than be in the, on the stage and in the spotlight and not doing that. Sometimes you can have both, and that's okay. But I don't want to be in the spotlight, just to have the spotlight, right? I want to be in the spotlight because I earned the spotlight, and I'll be in the backdrop changing lives if that's what's necessary. One of the things that came to mind while you were talking is I made the comment earlier that that hyper awareness and understanding what we lack can sometimes make us stuck. But the shift, the savage will thought there that's going to unlock and unhinge is going to be, no, I can change that. I can make myself better. So we can't let that, analysis lead to paralysis. We can't let that over analysis lead to passivity and just say, well, I can't control it. It's just the way I was wired. And I hear that excuse all the time. Well, I'm just not like that. Well, no one is before they become it.
Exactly.
Right? It's the biggest excuse. It's like a poor man's thought. It's poor man's language. And in order to unhinge, you can't have that as a part of your vocabulary well, I'm just not that. And that's the way I am.
Yeah.
No,
get rid of that.
Our whole, imagine if a baby that crawls says, well, I can't really walk. So that's just not who I am. Well, no, he or she's got everyone around him or her encouraging them, say get up and walk, because they know it's possible. And you have to have that vision for yourself and knowing it's possible, knowing you can change, knowing you can have that, caterpillar to butterfly effect of that metamorphosis, that adaptation of growing your skills, growing your desires, growing your ability to speak, growing your ability to listen, growing your ability to communicate with people. Being able to communicate with people is one of the biggest things that I've learned.
Yeah.
I still am improving at, but effective communication skills will get you a long way in life. And because in order to do that, in my opinion, you have to have a vision for yourself so
100%.
you can communicate that to others. If you're unsure about who you are, you're never going to be able to communicate to other people, a vision or have them jump on board. Those people that you want in your circle, if you don't know what you're doing, or at least have a plan and a desire to do that, like if you have no goals, no vision, you're not going to pull people into your life that can help you get there. Right? Like you have to know what you don't have in your life to even attract it, or even to change and even have a chance at growing in that capacity. If you don't know where you lack, then I feel like that's the best place to start is sitting down. We've talked about it. You go to bed. Right before you go to bed, you sit down and say, hey, what am I doing that's preventing me from getting where I'm at? God, reveal that to me. And it might be hard what is revealed, the things that you lack, because there's a part of us that thinks we're great and we're sufficient and we're perfect. The perfect part of life is the ability to learn and grow. Perfection is a process. It's not a status, and everyone is chasing it. And that's the beautiful thing is we can grow, we can craft, we can learn, we can become something that we want to be. That's the whole creative aspect I think we've been given, and why we're here is to craft those things. So we can't let the analysis lead to passivity or paralysis, as some people would say, because it sounds good. You can remember that. But we have to analyze our situation, and we can't stop there. We have to break free from those habits and unlock, unhinge, untap, to become untether.
So listen, don't apologize for who you are. That's what we're bringing on this episode. Let me give you some multiple takeaways. 1, apologizing can become annoying. 2, it's probably unnecessary. It's just a habit that you formed. I'm not saying don't apologize when it's supposed to be done because you've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm just simply telling you, know what's right and what's wrong. Number 3, it makes you look weak. And you keep apologizing to people over and over again. You're giving them a power and a permission over you to minimize and make you look like you're nothing or foolish or soft or less than. 4, over apologizing makes you look guilty. Stop apologizing for who you are. It makes you look guilty. Number 5, it makes you feel like you're sorry, and it takes away the true meaning of your message. When you're always apologizing, it takes away the true meaning of your message, right? 6, you can't accept someone else's blame. I've done that. I know it doesn't work. Even when you do it to try to move something along and make things better, you cannot accept someone else's blame. 7, apology can set a poor example. If you're always apologizing, you could be setting a poor example, period, for your life and for those that are looking at you, your children and other people. 8, learn how to embrace silence. Sometimes, we want to fill the void of silence with an apology. When it's silent, just let it stay silent. Just be quiet. Number 9, you need to find another phrase. You realize my bad, it's on me, was born out of I'm sorry, I apologize. Say it another way. Do it a different way. And don't make that a habit either. Make it so that you don't have to say my bad, it's on me too many times. Be deliberate. And number 10, think before you do anything. Just be honest. Just be honest. Like stated earlier, analyze before you apologize. Analyze before you apologize. Man, we getting ready to dovetail all of this thing, man. I'm so glad that we touched on this. I'm happy to see my friends out there in the Facebook land that just joined in. Hey, tell us where you're coming in from, what state that you're coming in from. I know some of us from the Carolinas. I can see some of you guys here in DC area. Some of you in Chicago. Bless you all for being there. Tell us where you're from. Hey, listen, man, don't apologize for who you are was the title of this message. We're very serious about unhinging and getting unpacked and getting untethered. Raleigh, North Carolina. There you go, John. Getting untethered. Make sure that we're letting this savage will get inside of us and break off a little something that doesn't need to be there anymore, guys. We're better. We can do better. We need better for our lives. Our children are dependent on us. Other people in the neighborhood are dependent on us. Washington, D.C., I see you right there. They're dependent on us, right? So let's make this a part of our journey. I'm not asking you to become arrogant and conceited or narcissistic. I'm asking you to stop apologizing for the woundedness that you suffered as a child or as an adult and get rid of that altogether. I see you, Chicago. Get that stuff out of your life. It's time for it to die. It's time for it to end. We got something better. It's waiting on us, and you can't find it until you take the little child and heal that little child and stop that child from having to apologize for everything. George, you got to take us home, baby.
I love it. It was a great episode. I enjoyed this topic. I think it's really important and integral in helping people grow and learn just about who they are and the psychology behind success and growing and adapting to that new mentality, the new self, the new me, the new he, the new her, whoever. Just want to say thanks for tuning into the podcast with us today. Thanks for participating in the comments.
Thank you, guys.
Please like and subscribe, and we'll be here back at 11:11 next Saturday. 11:11.
Hey, George, let me break in here for a second. Hey, in 2 weeks, we're going to have Carissa Span come on, and she's going to be talking to us about real estate market and some commercial stuff that's going on out there and getting our minds right about what's going on in the economy, what we can do, what we can avoid, what we can build upon. 2 weeks, man. That's the third Saturday of this month. We're going to be jamming. And she's going to be in here giving us some voice on some of these things. We got Dr. Harvey Shropshire coming back at the end of the month. He's going to drop a little nugget on us, man. So we got some stuff coming up here for the will, the Savage Will. So Savage Will, 11:11, baby. We got some stuff coming at you, man, so we can round out, so we can get better about who we are, what we do, where we're doing it. George, go on, finish this, baby.
I love it. We're going to head out for today, guys. Y'all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Savage Will's out.
Savage Will.